Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. So as part of today's job, we're going to be working on the S2000 again. Today we're going to be working on the knock sensor installation, and if time permit, we're also going to be changing the motor mounts, and then hopefully have time to also mount the motor as well. So we are here at the S2000 motor. We have the stock motor mount. It came in. So we're gonna be working on that. And then here's the motor. Honda vtec. And then I got Damon here. He's gonna tell you a little bit about the motor.
Hey guys, welcome back. So today we're continuing the building on a 2006 Honda S2000. We're working with a inline 4-cylinder 2.2 vtec motor, and it puts out 237 horsepower at 7,800 RPM, and as far as torque wise, it puts out 162 foot-pound at 6,800 RPM. So we're gonna move right along and show you the knock sensor. So when we drop this motor, for some reason, the knock sensor, it's this part, it's this little gadget here that you're looking at. It could be, the motor only has about like 83,000 miles. So not sure if there was just too much pressure on the harness. It just happens to just wiggle loose the knock sensor. But this is how the knock sensor looks like. This is the one that was kind of we noticed that there was a hairline crack, and we're just gonna replace it. You know, it's broken. So this is a brand new one. We ordered this online, Amazon. It's about like $12. I call up the local store and they're talking about like $100. So that's a big difference. So we waited for like 3 days or so for this knock sensor to arrive, and it looks like it's a very good quality knock sensor. It's fairly simple, and it is located, guys. It is located. It's a little hard to reach, but if you look below the intake manifold, and you have all these heater hose, you have all these coolant hose, and the knock sensor, guys, not sure if you could see, but it is like, it's attached to the engine block. And excuse the middle finger, but that's like the longest finger I have. And it goes to that location there. So we're gonna be installing this knock sensor to the engine block. I don't know how well the video is going to show, but Dave here, he's a really good photographer, so we'll show you the best angle we could during the process of assembly, because then I have to stick the tools and socket. And oh, by the way, guys, it takes a 24mm socket, okay, a deep socket, because the switch, I find out on a regular socket, it's not deep enough to clear this switch here. So we don't want to do any more damage to the switch. So it's going to require a long 24mm socket, which I have here. So as you can see, that will get it to clear the switch here, so we won't damage it. So I'm gonna try my best to install this, at least get a couple of revolution going first on the socket and on this knock sensor, and then I'll try to insert the socket with the extension in there. Okay. Okay, so here is the location to the knock sensor. It's on the side of the engine block, just right below the intake manifold. And as you can see, this is the harness here that we're gonna install this harness back onto the knock sensor. Okay, so here is the knock sensor. We installed the knock sensor, the green sensor here, and this is your harness. So just make sure the harness is attached to the knock sensor. Make sure it's fully secure, and you won't, because you really don't want to deal with this when the motor's back in the vehicle. It's a pain in the butt. So again, this is the knock sensor and the harness, and it's located just right above the starter and the solenoid, and it's attached to the engine block. Okay, this is the S2000 2006 S2000 AP2 knock sensor.
Okay, so just as Damon said earlier, this is where the knock sensor is. As you can see, the little green area, this is because the plug is already attached, but essentially above my finger is where the knock sensor is. Okay, so we're getting ready to put on the motor mount, but unfortunately the motor that we're using doesn't have the adapter to it, so we're going to go ahead and take it from our donor motor, which is sitting on the other side over here where Damon is prepping. But we're going to show you where that adapter is. So essentially it's right here. We're missing that piece. We're going to come over to the other motor and we'll show you exactly where it is, where we're going to remove and use it as part of our mounting process during the motor mounting. Okay, so this is the donor motor that we were talking about earlier. This is essentially the adapter that we're going to be needing. As you can see, it's tightly bolted on, and we're also noticing that, of course, this is the mount at the bottom, which is broken. We're going to be replacing that as well. It's full crack right there. So we're going to take that entire unit and we're going to use it as part of the build. This is the racing mount that came off of the damaged motor. Essentially, as you can see, it's fairly long, and it goes directly into the subframe. The stock one requires the adapter, which we showed you earlier. So we're going to replace the racing mount with the stock mount back onto it, and once it's done, we're going to drop the motor in to this whole mounting unit, or at least the stock mounting unit, and then we're going to raise it into the motor as part of the installation. So this is what it looks like of the damaged motor and motor mount that you saw as a donor, and then we're going to be using the stock mount, motor mount, and then into the donor motor. Okay, so going back to the donor motor, as you can see right there, that's where Damon's going to be removing the stock adapter so that we can fit it into the OEM motor mount and then use it as part of the S2000 installation to get it back up and running. So give it a couple of minutes and we're going to get all the right tool sets and start installing. And then why don't you tell us a little bit about what the wrench size you're using so that everyone knows?
Okay, so we're going to separate the motor mount itself from the part of the engine bracket. It's kind of like an extension. And the top mount, actually all the mount, it's you'll just need a 17mm socket or a 17mm wrench to get to it. Because there's a limited space here, can't really put a socket and a breaker bar here. I'll just work with some good old wrench here.
One of the mechanics tricks, right? So we don't have enough leverage, so we're just using two wrenches at the same time to make it so that we have some sort of leverage to start pulling out the nuts and the bolt.
So that's part of the broken mount. And now we'll get the top one off. Okay, so this is the broken mount. As you can see, the very top of it just literally just came apart, 2 pieces. There is a shield, sort of like a dampened shield, so we'll replace that with the new mount, and we will install the mount with the shield, and then just pop it right back up there.
But of course, we're not going to be using this motor because this motor's cover is already broken.
Yeah.
So it's pretty messed up. It's the damaged motor that we're using as the donor, and then we're going to be putting it into the working motor and then reinstalling it back to the SUV.
So these are it's a aluminum, it's like a motor mount extension, and it's held together by 4 14mm. Okay, and that's where the motor mount is going to attach up onto, and then this bottom 2 will go into the subframe. Okay, so there's just 3 bolts on the motor mount itself, 17mm, and one on top is 17mm, and these 4 are just 14mm. Okay. There's a ground that attached to the subframe, so make sure we remove that.
So this is pretty much the good motor mount that we have here, as you can see. Look at that, there you go. Compared to the broken one earlier, which the top part practically fell off. So this area right here was where this whole thing broke off, and this is the part where it connects to the motor mount adapter, or at least the bar that connects to the extended part. So this whole area broke off on both sides. All we need is pretty much the adapter that we showed you earlier, which is right here, which is still being mounted. So we're going to be removing that and then proceed as part of the installation onto the new motor. Essentially, this is pretty much it. Both sides of the motor, there's a mount on adapter on each side of the motor, so we make sure that we cover on both sides.
Same as the other side, just 14 millimeter, and the extension bracket just come right off. Okay.
So we're just getting ready to pretty much lift the motor up using the motor lift, and moving it to a location where we can start mounting this to the subframe, and then eventually lift this all the way up into the S2000 motor area. So this is the subframe that we're going to be using. This is the good subframe without any damage to it. We're going to be mounting the motor mounts onto the subframe and then eventually onto the motor. And then from there we'll just lift the entire unit directly up into the S2000, so that it's a lot easier than going up, down. We're going to go from down, up. So we get the motor lifted up a little bit, so it's a lot easier for us to start working on the adapter mount. So it's up. Damien's about to start mounting the adapter right here. I'll show you right in a few minutes. Alright.
So we're going to install this 4 millimeter. I'm using the same original bolt, 14 millimeter.
Always best practice. We want to use, hand tighten as much as possible before we start, pushing too much pressure into it. Just distribute the weight evenly across before fully tightening it down.
Okay, just to make the installation a little easier, I'm going to put a little WD-40 on the bolt just to kind of ease it when it goes in. Always good practice. Put a little loop on the bolt. Also a good practice to at least get the bolt started a couple of revolutions by hand, so that if you know that it's going in the wrong way, at least you can just ease out and reinstall it without damaging the threads. And just my preference when I install the bolt. I always like to go crisscross, sort of like just, you know, crisscross, zigzag, and at least you'll kind of just have the plate mounted evenly without distorting it. So okay.
Alright, and there we have it. We'll just repeat the same process again on the other side.
Okay, so I'm installing this motor mount to the aluminum extension bracket there. There's like a little,
bring it up a little bit.
there's a little, sort of like a little guy pin here on the mount, and I'm just going to line it up with the metal bracket here, just so that we can have a perfect installations. So I'm just going to finger tight the top nut first. If it needs to, I can later on just readjust the angle a little bit on this 2 bolt onto the front subframe. And once I get the whole mount onto the subframe, then I'll come back and retorque all these nuts. Okay.
The reason why we're doing it right now is so that it's a lot easier, so that we can just drop the motor and the motor mount right on top of the subframe instead of trying to lift the subframe up and install it while it's in the air. So it's one of those, you know, easy quick trick that a lot of mechanics generally use. Alright, so onto the other side, we're going to repeat the process again, same process, and we're going to mount the adapter before the motor mount.
So we're attaching the upper motor mount bracket, the extension.
We did the right side earlier, now we're going to be doing the left side.
Common practice, just use hand tight, couple of revolutions, and then start your installation. Again, I always do the crisscross pattern so you have a perfect assembly. Again, the right bracket, as you can see here, so it says right side, and it also has the same alignment, the little notch here, so we're going to align that onto the same on the bracket. Okay. As you can see, guys, on the right side, I can see that how the bracket, it's sort of like a U-shaped bracket. I can see how it's actually shielding the mount from the heat. Even though the exhaust header, the S2000, they only use the headers, and we'll show you in a minute. In the header, it creates a lot of heat, and even with the heat shield that covers the header and the lower heat shield, it's always good to have another additional shield, just to kind of, you know, because you can imagine over the year this motor mount, it's not just taking a lot of beating on stretching, but it also takes a lot of heating. Like if you're stuck in the traffic, as you can imagine, it creates a lot of heat, and it can easily just damage the mount. Okay, so again, we're just going to hand tight so we can do the the proper adjustment later once it goes back onto the subframe. And we're getting ready to install the subframe right now.
Okay, so we got the motor up, pallets out of the way, and we're about to drop the motor into the subframe, which we got underneath here. There we go. It's going to take some positioning, but we'll eventually get it in there. Don't forget to go back and tighten your bolt. We kind of kept it loose earlier to make sure that we're able to adjust things. This is where the motor mount is, so. Okay, so this, as you can see, we got the motor mount onto the bracket, which is right on top here. Motor mount's down here. So the difference between the race motor mount versus the stock motor mount is that the cushion is right here on the stock, right? This is where it absorbs most of the engine vibration, whereas the racing one went straight from the motor into the subframe. So it's transferring the entire motion of the motor every time you start it up, every time you move around. So you feel the entire vibration inside the cabin. So we didn't want that. We want to use the stock motor mount. That way it's a lot quieter inside the cabin.
So we're gonna remove the rack and pinions from this subframe, and we will reinstall the rack and pinion, which is also referred to like the steering rack. We're gonna remove it and reinstall it onto the other unit. It's 4-bolt, 14 millimeters.
Okay, so this is pretty much it. Now we're getting ready to move this over to where the installation of the car and the motor comes together.
So prior to our installations of the whole subframe with the motor, we were just inspecting these bolts, and basically you have 3 bolts that secured the subframe to the frame of the vehicle, and then you have 3 more on this side that secured the subframe onto the main frame of the vehicle. And as we were inspecting the bolt, we noticed that there is 1 bolt that is completely stripped. So what that means is the thread inside where the bolt goes onto, it's already damaged. So we would have to order some tools to clean up the thread pitch inside. And these are 14 millimeter by 1.5 on the millimeter thread pitch. So again, as you can see, that this bolt here is completely stripped. So we would have to get tools, clean it up, and then we'll show you on the next video how we gonna install the whole subframe with the motor onto this vehicle. So thanks for watching our video, and if you haven't subscribed, click the button below and subscribe to our channel. See you in the next video.